Good afternoon and welcome to the Public Works meeting for September 19th. I am Chair Brenda Fincher. I have with me Councilmember Seth Winder-Core, and we have Director Chad Barron of the Public Works Department. There are no changes to the agenda today, but we do have a public comment that is going to be added into the record. With that, we are ready for a motion.
Chair, I move to approve minutes for August 15, 2022.
Second, it has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes for August 15th. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries, and we are on to goods and services agreement with TriVan Truck Body for construction of 2 water trucks with Dave Brock.
Yeah, Dave Brock, Deputy Public Works Director, talking about a fleet item this afternoon. And as you said, it's replaced 2 water service trucks we have. One truck 21 years old and the other 16 years old. And certainly in need of replacement. They've reached their end of their useful life, and so that's what this item is about. These trucks are instrumental to our crews in responding to water leaks. We have about 70 water leaks per year, and very much these trucks are more of a mobile workshop for those crews in the fabrication of those parts and just used day in and day out. In replacing these trucks, we've already done a fair amount of work starting last year in 2021. These are larger trucks, and they're referred to as a Class 6 truck, and basically procurement of the cab and chassis, and as I was just highlighting in the photo. This is very typical of trucks these size to go about replacing them and fabricating them this way. Very similar to how a dump truck or a Vector truck is done. Cabin chassis are the first thing that are done. So in 2021, we placed the order for the cabin chassis with Kenworth Northwest. Those trucks are due to be built in November of 2022 this year. And yes, you heard that right, 14 months after they're ordered, they will be fabricated. So moving on to the back portion of the truck, and this is more of the service body, the second half of the truck. We have solicited proposals for that particular component of the truck. We received 1 bid. This is pursuant to our procurement policy. That bid was submitted by TriVan Truck Body. We've worked with TriVan Truck Body previously. We've had a good track record, if you will. They've had a good track record with us, more to say. And this is up by Bellingham, Washington, and we're recommending we enter into a goods and services agreement with TriVan Truck Bodies for just under $440,000. And this is paid for by the water utility funds.
Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions, Councilmember? I had a few questions, and Director Barron and I had a conversation because I was wondering about the old trucks that are going to be surplus and why we couldn't use those. And so now understand, especially with them being surplus, between the worth that we would, the additional worth that leaving them as is brings and what we would be able to garner as I would say rebuilding, that it wouldn't be worth us to do that. So, and the life that we will continue getting out of it. So,
Chair Fincher, actually, and I talked with Dave after you and I talked, and he had a couple of other items that he pointed out. I'll let you point out, Dave, but this comes back to the bigger size truck that we're using, and then the issues we were having with the existing vehicles.
Yeah, one of the existing trucks, it's really the powertrain on the truck.
That particular truck, the both Ford model trucks, has a 6-liter diesel engine, and that particular engine in that model year 2006 has been a known challenge for a lot of people, and we've experienced just ongoing problems with that powertrain. The other thing with the Class 6 trucks that I referred to in the previous slide, and this is really the front end of the truck, we're able to really customize the truck, if you will, with the powertrain and sizing the engine. It allows us to position the axles on the frame, so it's more of a custom kind of frame to fit the service body as we want, as well as from a safety standpoint, with our rolling topography in Kent, we're getting the braking system, making sure the brakes, these are heavy trucks, they're designed to pull equipment, and so just making sure we have the braking system to accommodate that weight is very important, so that's been included as well.
thank you. And this is a budgeted item that was part of the water fund. So, ready for a motion?
Chair, I move to authorize the mayor to sign a contract with TriVan Truck Body in the amount of $439,358.45 for the construction of 2 water truck aluminum service bodies, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the city attorney and public works director.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
So it has been moved and the motion is passed to authorize the mayor to sign a contract with TriVan Truck Body in the amount of $439,358.45 for the construction of 2 water truck aluminum service bodies. So, thank you very much for that one. And we now move on to Erik. Preston is going to come up and tell us about neighborhood parking restrictions.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, council members, members of the committee. I'm Erik Preston, your city traffic engineer. And so, this afternoon we'll be talking about proposed parking code modifications. So, just a quick overview of parking. There are general parking restrictions that apply everywhere. And so these are in state law RCW 4661, also called the rules of the road. These apply to all public streets. Some of these statewide restrictions are listed on this slide that might be familiar to you. Parking restrictions on public streets that are specific to Kent are written into the Kent City Code in Chapter 938. This includes no parking zones, time-limited parking such as 2- and 4-hour parking, and overnight parking as well. But this afternoon I'd like to focus on parking restrictions for narrow streets. And so this is a high-level look, and if council supports the parking restrictions, we will engineer the specific nuts and bolts of those and bring them back for further consideration. So for each location, I'll show a location of the map, where it is in the city, a detailed map, and follow this with an aerial photo of the neighborhood, and then the proposed restrictions are color-coded. Red lines are no parking on either side, and orange will be parking on only one side. So minimum street widths are established for emergency response. Chapter 13 of the Kent City Code, fire prevention and protection in particular, fire apparatus roads have a minimum unobstructed width of 20 feet. City design standards require between 28 and 36 feet for parking on one side of the street, and 36 or more feet is required for parking on both sides of the street. Locations we're going to talk about this afternoon were brought to us from either the police department, Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority, or the neighborhoods themselves. All proposed restrictions have been discussed with police and fire, and both are in support of these restrictions. All of the residents and property owners on these streets were mailed letters notifying them of the proposed changes and requesting their feedback, and that's why I'm here today. I also want to get your feedback. So also keep in mind, removing on-street parking removes the visual friction for drivers, which can lead to speeding. But in general, wider streets encourage speeding and narrower streets reduce speeding. So if that does happen, we do have the residential traffic calming program that can address speeding concerns if speeds increase. So the first neighborhood is Midori Meadows, which is located in the northeast part of the city, right there, just off 132nd Avenue. This one came to us from the residents of the neighborhood through economic and community development. So 131st Place is just south of 218th that you can see there. This was built in 2016. This is one of, if not the last developments built in Kent that was permitted under King County before the Panther Lake annexation. 131st Place is 24 feet wide, as shown by the red line. The picture of the street is shown on the left, looking south. We proposed parking be restricted on both sides of the street, and when we brought this to the fire marshal, he was aware of the narrow street and asked for this street to be posted no parking. In this neighborhood, we mailed 17 letters, received 3 responses, 1 in support, 1 was neutral, and 1 asked for the relevant code for parking restrictions but did not comment on the proposal. So do you have any comments on this one before I move on?
I guess we just probably need to reach out to the residents again to see if we can get more support from them on this, because that's always the tough part. I know when it went into effect in my neighborhood, because my neighborhood is part of that Panther Lake annexation, and our streets were not wide enough, and we went through this process, and I had some very angry neighbors who did not participate in the process, but were very vocal after the fact. So I think we want to get as engagement possible in the beginning than later. So I would appreciate that. Thank you.
And that was my only concern, so on to the next one.
All right, next one is Villarreal, including 200th and 204th Street, which is also kind of in the same part of the city, the northern part here on East Hill. This one, the Homeowners Association approached us about parking on the narrow streets. The neighborhood itself of Villarreal is shown outlined in purple. Villarreal was built in King County before the Panther Lake annexation. 111th Place Southeast is the main street running north-south. It has the yellow dashed line, this main thoroughfare through the neighborhood. It is 28 feet wide. The minor streets are 24 feet wide. And so the top picture on the left is 201st Street looking east. This street is 24 feet wide and is this area right here. Then the next picture down, 110th Terrace, looking north, 24 feet wide. That's this part of that loop that you can see there. And then the bottom picture, 202nd Lane, is actually looking east. That's on the lower section of that loop. So as you can see, that entire loop is proposed. No parking on both sides because of its 24-foot width. This was discussed with the police and the fire marshal. Both supported the proposal. When the fire marshal reviewed it, they also asked us to include parking on 200th and 204th, which both have sections that are 28 feet wide as well. Or excuse me, less than 28 feet wide. So in this area, we mailed 223 letters. We received 7 responses, so 3%. 4 were in support, 2 were opposed. 1 asked us about enforcement but did not comment on the proposal. And like many other neighborhoods, those in opposition were mainly concerned about where they could find parking once the parking was removed from their street. So, any comments or concerns on this one? Okay. The next neighborhood is the Ridge at Panther Lake and the Plateau at Panther Lake. This is also in the northeast corner of the city, right next to Renton. These are 2 separate neighborhoods, but they share a homeowners association management company, and that HOA came to us. This neighborhood was built in King County before the Panther Lake annexation. Has 2 main streets that are 28 feet wide. All the minor streets are 24 feet wide. There are no parking restrictions in the city code for this neighborhood, but the pictures the pictures on the left. Oh, I didn't go to the next slide. I'm so sorry. So again, the 2 main streets are 28 feet wide. You can see portions of them 113th here, the yellow-orange, and also parts of 196th are 28 feet wide. The other minor streets are 24 feet wide. Pictures on the left do approximate parking on the nights and weekends. The top picture is of 113th Avenue looking north. That street is 24 feet wide. The passable width shown in that picture is about 11 feet. Bottom picture is 113th Place South looking north. That street is 28 feet wide, so parking is proposed on the west side only, which you can see is largely being observed. We discussed this with police and the fire marshal. Both support proposed parking restrictions. Staff met with the HOA representatives from both neighborhoods to discuss the proposed restrictions. In this case, we mailed 230 letters and received 6 responses, again, about 3%. 3 were in support, 1 was opposed, and 2 asked about enforcement but did not comment on the proposal. And so again, those opposed mainly concerned again about where they could find parking, and also just the safety of their neighborhood. Excuse me. Any comments or concerns before I move on? Okay. This next street, 133rd Avenue, between 224th Street and 224th Place. This is also in the Panther Lake annexation area and came to us from the police department. Police have noted that there has been parking on the inside of this curve, and the area of the restriction that we're focused on is this little section, north-south section of 133rd Avenue. So that section is 28 feet wide, which means we can park, or they can park on one side. We mailed 32 letters, received 3 responses, and all 3 were in support of that. Okay, I'll move on to the next one. Southeast 220th Street, between 102nd Place and 103rd Place. This one is also on the East Hill. Came to us from both police and fire. This section of 220th Street is a 20-foot wide paved street width and meets the minimum width for emergency access. And we are proposing no parking on both sides for this segment. So you can see the pictures on the left there looking east and west. We mailed 47 letters in this case and received 0 responses. Any comments on this? So now 228th Street. This is down in the valley, not far from Highway 167, between 88th Avenue South and the east end of the street. This is also a request from the fire department. There is some existing no parking signing in this case, but it is not in the city code. The street is 28 feet wide, but has a striped center line and striped shoulders, which you can see on the pictures. So those shoulders of 4 feet approximately are not wide enough for parking. We mailed 19 letters and received 1 response, which asked us to modify the parking proposal in front of their business. So that is something that we could consider.
Just one item of note, I just noticed this on, and sorry we missed it on the review of the packet, but that is not Sunrise Elementary School on the upper right of that photo. Yeah, so it's actually down in the valley, the location.
Thank you. Any other comments? Sorry?
Is it Neely or what is it? Business?
Those are businesses. Those, if I remember right, it's not self-storage. I think they're actually small one-door businesses that
Right.
abut 224th.
A mix of industrial or uses. Okay, I'll move on to the next one. This is South 243rd Street and 93rd Court South. This one came to us from the police department, and it is right there on the East Hill. So this neighborhood street is shaped like an L. Again, came to us from police, from people parking on the inside of the curve was their concern. The street is 28 feet wide, which would allow parking on one side. In this case, we mailed 21 letters and received 2 responses. Both were in support. In this case, we met with them in their neighborhood and modified our proposal based on their feedback. So, any other comments? Okay. Next slide. This is 92nd Avenue and 222nd Street, also on the East Hill. And so this one came to us from the fire department. Their concern was people parking on the inside of the curve, and truly all parking on this street intrudes into the fire lane. So this street is 20 feet wide, and so no parking would be allowed on either side. We mailed 15 letters and received 0 responses. So I believe that is all. That's all I have for you now. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, Eric, for this presentation. I'm actually very familiar with that street. My friend lived there, and I drove there often, and it's a very narrow street, but I know that neighbors have more than 2 or 3 cars, and they have teenagers who are at the age of driving now, so they have more cars. So I think I'd be interested to hear from the neighbors on what they think about parking enforcement. And the other, I guess, question is actual enforcement. We can put up all the no parking signs, and it comes down to, are we actually doing something about it? Do we have the bandwidth to actually do something about it? So I think that's where my other concern would be. So,
Of course.
thank you.
My main concern again is still the just making sure that that the neighbors have been communicated with what's going on, and to remember, trying to balance out the need for parking with the need for the emergency vehicles, not only in case of fire, but also if medical emergencies that they need to get through for. So any number of things they may need to pass for. But even though you've mailed out all those letters, many people we know did not open them to read them. So I don't know whether it's a note on their door or what, but I would like to see us do more to be able to contact them.
All right. Okay,
Is that the end?
that is it.
Would you also just do a quick mention of overview, believe you would be able to do it, on traffic calming programs? Just what it is, how to go about it, to let people know that we do have one and what they need to do to, and under what circumstances they might want to have one done.
Sure. So the residential traffic calming is open to residential neighborhoods on public streets that are residential in nature, but also classified as local or residential collector streets. And so to do that, they simply contact the city in whatever way that they want to, and we can give them program information. But the first step is to gather support. And so those individuals would, we need to hear from at least 5 households on that street or in that neighborhood, and then the city goes out and does a study. And within our program that was adopted by council, there is a points system. And so based on the speed and the volume that we see on the street, as well as the proximity to transit, parks, schools, whether or not there are sidewalks on the street, we take a lot of those things into consideration, and basically each street earns points. So if they reach 50 points, then we say, great, we're going to confirm that. So we do another study about 8 weeks later to make sure we just didn't get it on a fast day or something. And so we confirm those results. We then set up a neighborhood meeting if that is confirmed and they do qualify. And we go from there. In that neighborhood meeting, we work with the residents to decide what types of traffic calming devices we can put in that neighborhood and where they might be good locations for them. And we kind of come up with a plan. All right, we refine that plan. We kind of get the thumbs up from fire and police, and then we send that out for a vote. And so if it passes the vote, then we schedule that for construction when we have funding available.
Thank you.
The elevator pitch.
Thank you. And I had a conversation just this past weekend. There were 3 of us there, two other residents from the city, and one made the comment that, oh, it's too hard to do. I said, well, there have been some changes to the program, so you might want to give it a, I actually asked them to call Rob. I didn't give your direct number, I gave the department number, but to call Rob and, find out what's involved. Because, for instance, you don't have to have people sitting with the speed guns and all sorts of weather. And there have definitely been changes, and in my mind, it's not a difficult process to have that check done. Whether you meet the numbers or not meet the numbers, the percentages, that's different. But it's not difficult to have the study done.
Exactly. So. And when in 2020 we redid the program, so it's much easier to qualify now.
Thank you very much. And before the meeting closes, did you have something to add to that?
No, nothing to add to that.
Before the meeting closes, I understand I did not have my microphone on when the previous motion was passed, and so I'm going to just repeat what we did. There was a motion that was made for I'll just read the motion. The motion was to authorize the mayor to sign a contract with TriVan Truck Body in the amount of $439,358.45 for the construction of 2 water truck aluminum service bodies. And that motion was made by Councilmember Corr. I seconded it. The motion passed, and it will be on the consent agenda for the council meetings coming up. So, if there is nothing else for the good of the order, meeting is adjourned.
Resulting in months of delay being added